Welcome to Real Estate IQ Wisdom for Smart Moves. We will explore the insider secrets tailored exclusively for Silicon Valley home buyers, sellers, and investors, arming you to conquer the unique real estate landscape. So, without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. Today, we welcome Ron Ricardo, the Vice President for IPX 1031 of Northern California. As a certified exchange specialist, he has educated over 50,000 investors and agents on 1031 exchanges since 2002. In Silicon Valley, the lack of understanding about 1031 exchanges could lead to significant tax savings being missed, especially given California's high capital gains tax rate of 13.3%. For instance, property owners might fail to defer over $260,000 in taxes on a $2 million sale. This issue is particularly pertinent in Silicon Valley's real estate market, characterized by high-value transactions and median home values often exceeding $1 million, a reflection of its prominence as a tech hub. The following content is only for informational purposes. Please consult a licensed consultant for your specific situation or if you need any specific legal or tax advice.
Ron, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Give us a brief background about yourself and your company.
All right. So whenever you do a 1031 exchange, the IRS requires the use of a third party called the intermediary, and that's what our company does. So Investment Property Exchange, or IPX 1031, is the nation's largest qualified intermediary. We are a national company. We do thousands of exchanges every month. I personally have been doing this for them for more than 20 years, as you already mentioned. And I personally have handled probably close to 30,000 exchanges on my own during that time.
So what is 1031 exchange?
1031 refers to a section of the tax code. It's a section of the tax code that allows you to sell real estate that's used for business or investment purposes and reinvest that money into other real estate for business or investment purposes. And in doing so, you get to defer paying taxes on the profit that you've made. So you have a rental property, let's say it's a rental house, and you want to sell that and buy a fourplex. So you list the property. At the close of escrow, the money comes to a third party called the intermediary. That's what we are. We then send the money to the title company when you're making the purchase of the replacement property. So you're selling investment real estate, you're buying investment real estate, and because you used a third party called the intermediary, you never saw the money, and therefore you get to defer paying taxes on the profit that you've made.
And how does the process works?
Well, the process is actually fairly simple. Again, you're selling investment real estate, you're buying investment real estate. So you're going to hire a great agent like yourself to list the property. You're going to go through the regular process of selling the property. Once you're in contract with a buyer for the property, that's when we get involved. We work with the title company or escrow officer handling the sale so that at the close of escrow, the money from the sale comes to us. Again, that then starts a clock for you to tell us what you're going to go buy in replacement. Once you're in contract to buy that replacement property, then we work with the title company or escrow officer on that side and wire them the money. So again, you're selling investment real estate, you're buying investment real estate. We hold the money in between. Then the key by doing this for you is it's really not any different from selling a regular piece of real estate and buying a piece of real estate. It's just that there are some timing issues and a few other things that we will be talking about shortly.
And what sort of properties do qualify for 1031 exchange?
This is actually one of the common misconceptions, because oftentimes people will hear the term like kind and they think to themselves, oh, if I'm selling a house, I have to buy a house. And that's not correct. 1031 is for any kind of investment real estate to any other kind of investment real estate anywhere in the country. So you can sell a rental house and buy a shopping center. You can sell a farm and buy an apartment building. You could even sell bare land and buy a rental property. As long as what you're selling and what you're buying is investment real estate, it can be any kind of investment real estate. Also, you can buy multiple properties. So you can sell one and buy multiple properties, or you can sell multiple properties to buy one property. Also, 1031 is federal law, so it's good anywhere in the United States. So you can sell in California, buy in Florida, or sell in Texas, buy in Hawaii. You can, as long as what you're selling and buying is investment real estate, it could be any kind of real estate. The term like kind goes back many years ago when we used to do things for when we used to do exchanges for things other than real estate. So in my career, I've done exchanges for airplanes or artwork or farm equipment.
I see.
That's what, you sold an airplane, you had to buy an airplane. Sold farm equipment, you had to buy a farm equipment. We no longer have personal property exchanges. Now 1031 is only about real estate. And so any kind of investment real estate for any other kind, the term like kind really isn't very relevant anymore.
And why is timing so crucial about 1031 exchange?
Probably the most important thing in the 1031 is the timeline. So there are two important dates to remember. The first is that you need to know what you're going to buy within 45 days, and you need to close escrow within 180 days, which is about 6 months. Now, both of those clocks start the day escrow closes. So the entire time your property is in contract, nothing has happened. Once escrow closes, which means once the buyer buys that property from you, that starts the clock. And so you have 45 days to identify to us what you're going to buy, 180 days to close escrow. Now, when I say identify, what does that mean? Well, it means you can give us a list, a very limited list of properties, and you're giving us the exact address to the property. So for most times, people are only going to buy 1 or 2 properties. You can identify up to 3 properties, and you have to give us a list of up to 3 property addresses. But very importantly, you have to buy from that list. During the 45 days, you can change your mind as much as you want. Once midnight strikes on day 45, whatever you've identified, you are locked into. Now, a common question here is, do I have to be in contract by the 45 days? Technically, the answer is no. Technically, as long as you give us 3 addresses, but again, you have to buy from that list. So the problem is, if on day 46, all 3 of those properties get sold to somebody else, now you're out of luck. So for practical purposes, I always say by day 45, you want to be in contract on the property. You want your inspections done. You want your loan approved. You want to be as locked in as possible by that 45 days. I will also add, you are welcome to go into contract before to buy a property, even before you sell yours. As long as the one that you are selling closes escrow first, then it's still a regular exchange. So all that matters is when the escrows actually close.
And how much of the money from the proceeds needs to be reinvested back?
This is probably where people have most misconceptions. It's very simple though, all of it.
I see.
It's not just reinvesting the proceeds or reinvesting the profit. If you sell the property for $1 million, you need to go buy something for at least $1 million. Now, can you buy multiple properties that add up to $1 million? Yes. Can you buy for more than $1 million? Yes. If you buy less than $1 million, is that okay? The answer is actually still yes, but you pay tax on the difference. So if you sell for $1 million but only buy for $900,000, that extra $100,000 is referred to as boot. Boot is what you pay tax on. Most of us don't want to pay any taxes. We want to buy equal or greater in value. Part 2 to that, another thing that's very important is all of the equity, all the cash that comes from the sale, all needs to go to the next property. Any cash left over, you pay tax on. So we had some situations, not as much right now because the interest rates are higher now than they have been. But when people were buying a replacement property, they were maximizing the amount of loan they got. And sometimes they got too big of a loan. So even though they were buying something more expensive, they had cash left over. If you do, you pay tax on that cash. Now, there's a common misconception also that you have to replace the loan you had in the property with another loan. And that's technically not true. You need to replace the value of the loan. So let's use a simple example. You're selling $1 million property. There was a $300,000 loan on the property. So property sells, $700,000 is the net proceeds that comes to us. Whenever you buy the next property, that $700,000 has to go as a down payment towards buying the $1 million property. Now, that $300,000 gap, that difference, which was the loan that got paid off, you need to make up that difference. For most people, yes, you're going to get another loan to replace it. But if you have the cash in your pocket, you're welcome to use your own cash instead of getting a loan. So the key I always say to remember in an exchange is equal or greater in total value and use all the cash.
New property which a home seller purchases, can they use it as a primary home or it has to be an investment property?
Great question. No, the 1031 is for investment real estate only. So that begs the question, what is not investment real estate? Obviously, your primary residence is not investment real estate. Second homes are not investment real estate. Property that you're purchasing for resale, in other words, to flip, you buy it, you fix it, and you sell it. That's not investment property. That's property purchased for resale. So that doesn't qualify either. Now, it is possible. One thing we do see a lot of people do these days, especially in the Bay Area, where you have highly appreciated primary residences, is we see a lot of people move out of their property, convert their property into being an investment property. Now, after renting it for a period of time, you could actually take advantage of both tax rules at the same time, because you rented for a couple of years, it's now an investment property, but it still meets the criteria of primary residence having lived in the property 2 of the last 5 years. That's the tax code definition, living in the property for 2 years during the last 5 before the property is sold. And because you meet both criteria, you could take advantage of both tax rules at the same time. So you can sell your property for $3 million, pocket $500,000, assuming you're a married couple, and then do an exchange on the remaining $2.5 million. So even though you cannot do an exchange directly with the primary residence, it is possible to convert the property into being an investment so that you could take advantage of both tax rules. Again, in areas like the Bay Area that have people have a lot of gain, a lot of appreciation in their primary residences, this is a great tax strategy.
A typical problem homeowners have when wanting to buy a new home is whether to sell first or buy first. Either way is risky. When ready to look for a new home, TradeMyHome.com, powered by Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, offers an upfront guaranteed cash offer on your current home. Are you moving in the next 3 to 6 months? Text PAIR to 408-740-7400 for a free and no obligation professional equity appraisal report. For more information, visit TradeMyHome.com or call 408-740-7400. Remember, at TradeMyHome.com, your home is sold guaranteed or we'll buy it.
And what you said, the time limit is 2 years.
Well, the tax code doesn't say how long you have to rent the property for. Most accountants like to see 1 to 2 years. The key is, again, you've converted the property into an investment. Whatever you and your tax advisor feel is long enough, then that's between you and them. The tax code doesn't give us a specific amount of time. Now, obviously, if you rent the property more than 3 years, now you no longer meet the criteria of having lived in the property 2 out of the last 5 anymore. Now the property is solely an investment property. But during that sweet spot, 1 to 3 years of renting it out, now you have an ability to take advantage of both tax rules. So it's a real sweet advantage you have.
And what is the difference between forward exchanges and reverse exchanges?
Everything we've talked about so far is a regular exchange. You're selling, then you're buying. The money from the sale goes for the purchase of the replacement property. One thing we see, especially in a market like today, where there's very low inventory, people are afraid of not finding a replacement property because they figure if I sell mine, 45 days is not a lot of time to find a replacement property. So I want to find something first. A reverse exchange is exactly that. I'm buying a property and then I'll sell my property. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you go into contract to buy something, but the seller is willing to wait or the timing works out that you're able to sell your property first and then buy the replacement, that it is still a regular exchange. But if you actually need to close escrow on that property first, that's a reverse exchange. Now, the first thing to realize about a reverse exchange is you cannot buy that property and then call me. Because if you buy that property, you now own both. And you cannot do an exchange into something if you already own it. So what happens in a reverse exchange is we take title to the property. There are different ways of structuring the transaction, but in most cases, what happens in a reverse exchange is you come into escrow with the money to buy that property, and then we take title to that property and hold it until you sold your property. So it is a little bit more complicated. Lending is very difficult in a reverse exchange. It's also a more expensive transaction than a regular exchange, but for clients who have access to the funds to buy the property, and more importantly, have a situation where they really do need to buy the property before they can sell theirs, a reverse exchange is a great solution.
And what is the difference between different 1031 exchange companies out there?
One thing to note is what we do is not regulated. And so there are a lot of very small mom and pop exchange companies out there. And this is not to disparage anybody, but I think it's very important to work with very large, very established companies, not just not just because they're large, but because they have the backing typically of a large company. We are backed by the same company that owns Fidelity Title and Chicago Title and Lawyers Title and Tycor Title and a bunch of other title companies. We're a Fortune 500 multi-billion-dollar corporation with a parent corporation that has $2 billion in cash reserves. We are going to be around in the long term. We are not going to disappear with your funds. But more importantly, also, is if somehow there's some kind of wire fraud where you got your email hacked into and we send the money to the wrong bank, our parent corporation steps in and makes good on that. Small companies can't do that. So it's really worth working with large companies, because larger companies are safer companies, and that is what we would recommend. The cost difference is nominal. In most cases, they're all about the same anyway.
How much does it cost to do an exchange?
Our fee for 1031 is very small. It's $1,000 when you sell the property and $250 for each additional property bought or sold as part of the same exchange. So if you sell one, buy one, $1,250. It's a nominal amount.
And what are some common myths around 1031 exchange?
Well, there are a few. We've touched upon a few of them. That one common misconception that even a lot of accountants have is that they don't realize that a property can be both an investment property and a primary residence at the same time. For example, if you have a home office or an ADU where you are treating part of the property as a business or investment property, even though you live there, it's possible for a property to be both an investment and a primary residence at the same time. Another common myth is that people don't know that they need to use an intermediary, or they think that their attorney or their CPA could be the intermediary, and that's not true. It has to be a neutral third party, and that's because that's all we do is provide this role. Another common myth we touched on with regard to the dollars, I would say that a majority of people don't realize how much you need to reinvest. It's not just the profit, not just the equity, it's everything into that next property. So, you want to get yourself educated about this before you move on.
So why do people do 1031 exchange?
You would think that the most common reason people do exchanges is to defer taxes, because the whole idea of the 1031 is if I make $300,000 of profit on a property and I have to pay $100,000 in taxes, by doing the exchange I don't have to pay the government that $100,000. But the real reason you do the exchange is because you want to buy something better than what you own today. The easiest way to defer taxes is don't sell it. As long as you're not selling the property, you're not having to pay the taxes. 1031 is a tool that allows you to get from the real estate you own today to what you want to own tomorrow. Now, what do you want in the next property? Well, what you want is very subjective. Everybody has different needs about their real estate. Some people want to buy a property because it's going to have better cash flow for them. Or maybe they're moving to Texas and they want to move their rentals to Texas. Or maybe they want to buy a property that when they retire, they may want to move into. Or maybe they want to buy a property that's less management because now they're retired, they're tired of having to actively manage their real estate. So the reason people do exchange is more because they want to buy something that's a better property for them tomorrow than what they own today. And 1031 has been part of the tax code for over 100 years. So 1031 is a very powerful tool because it allows you to get from the real estate you own today to the real estate you want to own tomorrow. And if you think about it, real estate is literally the only asset that you can sell at a profit and not have to pay the tax man. Because we have the ability, as long as you buy another piece of investment real estate, you don't have to pay tax on that gain. Any stock, any mutual fund, any art piece, anything else you sell at a profit, you got to pay taxes, except real estate. So that's why real estate is such a wonderful investment.
So how do you see the future of 1031 exchanges evolving?
Well, believe it or not, 1031 has been around for over 100 years. It started in 1921. And we had a major change in exchanges in 1984, which is when we allowed for this 45 and 180-day clock. But the 1031, as we know today, has been around for almost 40 years. Now, there has been talk, occasionally you will hear that people in Congress or the president wants to change the 1031 rules. I really don't see anything serious happening. I believe it's something that is ingrained in our tax code. I believe that if the 1031 exchange went away, that real estate, for especially commercial real estate, would have a very serious drop in number of transactions, because people don't want to sell something if they're going to have to pay hundreds of thousands, or in many cases millions of dollars of taxes. So I don't really see 1031 exchanges changing dramatically. Could they tweak it? Yes. I will also say that, under current political conditions in Washington, I think it's going to be very difficult to have any significant changes to the tax code, whether it's 1031 or anything else. So at least for the foreseeable future, I don't see any change happening in Washington as far as 1031 goes. I always tell people I'm not looking for a new job yet.
And what advice will you give to the investors who are looking to do 1031 exchange?
The most important thing to note when you're doing an exchange is to plan. Okay. I cannot tell you how frequently I get a phone call from somebody, hey, I listed my property, I got a great offer, I'm closing escrow in 10 days. What do I do now? Well, it's like, you should have thought about this beforehand. Do you know what you want to buy? What are you looking for? How much do you want to spend? I mean, the most important thing I can tell you for a client is to plan. Before you sell your property, what are you going to want? What kind of property? What location? So that now, if my great agent has sold my property for me, they're able to say, okay, we're in contract. Now I can go start looking for replacement property. The most important thing people can do is be ready. Because the last thing you want to do is, have an offer and then all of a sudden realize I have a 6-week trip, a cruise going across the Mediterranean that I have to take. No, that's not going to work. Those 45 days are the fastest 45 days of your life. You want to be ready so that once you are in contract to sell your property, you can start getting out there and making offers.
Thank you so much, Ron, for your time today to come on our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I wish you good luck, and let's stay in touch.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast and acknowledging the wisdom of smart moves in real estate in Silicon Valley. Please share this episode with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts at Real Estate IQ. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their client commitment and for making this podcast possible. If you're considering buying or selling a home, visit TradeMyHome.com. Until next time, remember to stay ahead in the real estate game.